Thank you very much. So 1907, we have established a quorum, so we're going to call our meeting to order. And the first thing that we are going to do is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I would actually entertain a motion to move item number 6 on the agenda up to now.
Someone.
Kelly, can I have a second?
Second.
Me? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we're going to be talking about Brooklyn Best because we've got bedtimes. Can I go bedtime? So Mrs.
Sure.
Would you like to-
I would like to start the evening just by introducing to you, I know you've heard it at other board meetings, but we did celebrate the CAP Superintendents Award, and 3 of our 4 award winners are here. Representation is in the back of our 4th award winner. But I just really want to take this opportunity to share with you, the public, the board, and really highlight the great students that we have. So I would ask that Shelby stand up. And I'm going to say this right this time. Garagatelis. Did I do it?
Close.
No. Say it again for me. Sorry.
Garagatelis.
Garagatelis. All right. Sorry, Shelby. So Shelby is one of our 4th grade students that was recognized. And she's just an all-around good student, hard worker, conscientious, and kind to her classmates. And that's one of the reasons she was recognized. So I just wanted to introduce her and say congratulations. Come on up. Good job. And why don't you shake their hands?
Can't forget it.
You want to be done, right? Thank you. Next is Ian Sherman, also a 4th grade student. Yep, please stand. That's good. And another just all-around good student, kind to his classmates, a hard worker. One of the things that it says is that you work hard to get the work done correctly. You're a athlete. You play hockey and baseball, and you're a great student or a great team member to have on the team. And so we're really proud of you and glad that you're here. So congratulations. We're going to announce Lily Gutierrez, who's not here. Auntie is back there, and Grandpa's back there. Lily is an 8th grade student, and again, wonderful student, National Honor Society, student council. She's in athletics. She plays basketball and soccer. I assume she was playing at Woodstock Academy today, and she's probably performing right now at the middle school. Maybe? No. Band night. Oh, okay, last night. So her teachers identified her as a shining star with a bright future ahead of her. So we congratulate her. Finally, we're glad to have Connor Stewart here, our 8th grade recipient, and another hardworking student, strives to do his best at all times. Kind to his classmates. He's one of those students that we look to. These are the kind of students that you guys will be as 8th graders, so we're really glad to have our 8th grade role models here. He's a role model to his peers and his classmates, so congratulations. So I did invite the families to come here, and I did say they would just stay for a few minutes and then get to go home. So oops, sorry, yeah, there you go, sorry, Sheldon and Connor. So you're more than welcome to stay here, or you're welcome to go home for tonight, and thank you for being such wonderful representatives to the Brooklyn Public Schools. Thank you. Yes, please do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Future board member.
I am gonna just announce the, another award recipient, Gabrielle Cabinet, who's a 12th grade student at Woodstock Academy. Woodstock Academy identifies students from different communities, and so she was a Brooklyn student, that received the award, I'm sorry. She goes by Gabby. She's another one of these well-rounded students, participates in a variety of different activities, and is, we're proud to have her represent Brooklyn in her high school years. So I want to just congratulate her, and we'll send her a thank you or a congratulatory note as well. This portion of our meeting gives me an opportunity to talk about Brooklyn's best. Each month I ask the principals to share some comments about what's happening in their building. So I'm going to share those aloud with you. 11 band members and 14 members of the chorus performed at the QV Music Festival at Plainfield High School in November and did very well. They represent Brooklyn very well. The Lion Club Honors Assembly was held December 1st. There were 4 students who received the award, one from each grade level. There were also 44 5th graders, 64 6th graders, 65 7th graders, and 29 8th graders who were honored, recognized for earning honor roll status. We also had 25 members of the chorus perform at the Tree of Life. There's a lighting ceremony, and our students went and sang and performed. They had candles and were part of that at the Creamery Brook Retirement Village. I think that's a highlight for the residents there to have students come and sing. And finally, the Student Council spearheaded a coin award that raised about $500 that they donated to the relief victims of Puerto Rico as a result of the hurricane. So well done to our BMS students. At the Brooklyn Elementary School, Mrs. Pant, our remedial math, and Mrs. Sorgen, our special ed teacher, applied for and were awarded the Reflex Math Grant. This I did mention at the last meeting, but there actually were 2 teachers applied together, so they got another mention. Mr. March and the 3rd and 4th grade students performed a concert on Tuesday, December 12th. Again, a treat to have them perform and hear our students. Brooklyn Elementary has a kindness campaign that is continuing, and they're displaying kindness work and around the building. And then the staff are engaged in the EES Rock, so recognizing kindness of staff. So just trying to emphasize the kind of environment that we want to have for our students, as well as our staff. Let's see. Finally, there were many students who participated in the International Hour of Code on December 5th. They showed off their STEAM skills, and we had volunteers from the Pomfret School and some board members and spouse that volunteered that day. So it's nice to see parents in the building. I know we have a lot of parents in different places. Although it's not on the list, we did have lots of parent volunteers when the PTO was holding their holiday bazaar. Is that what you call it? What do you call it?
Holiday event. Yeah.
But it's great to see, and I just want to take this moment, each month to recognize some of the great things that are happening that you might not know about. So thank you.
Next, public comment. So next for the approval of minutes. Under that, I would like to make a motion to add the minutes for 12/4/17, the special budget meeting that we had. So, how many seconds? All in favor? Aye, okay. On the November 29th special meeting, just need to correct something, Joanne. I have in my notes that Kelly got here at 6:02, so that's why we called the meeting to order at 6:02, because we wouldn't have been able to call the meeting to order until she got here, because she was our board. And that's the special,
November 29th.
the first, the November 29th. It's the, like, one that does. Yeah, 6 o'clock. So that was my only thing, is that we had that, hadn't come before we did the report, so it was just a time thing. And then, on the December 4th meeting, just a couple of things. Me was an excused absence, so I just wanted to make sure that that was noted. Mrs. May arrived at 3 o'clock. If we can notate that, because I think she got here just before Kelly. And if we can clarify, under call to order, that we began a budget workshop at 2:30, but the meeting was called to order at 3 o'clock once a quorum was established, just so that we're clear, because I know that we started talking about things, just because we didn't want to waste any time. We knew that people were going to be a little bit late, so we started discussing that things, but officially we called the meeting to order at 3 o'clock, so I just want to make sure that that's clarified, so we're all square. Anything else on those 3 sets of minutes? Anyone have? All right, so I will entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes as amended for the November 29th special meeting, the November 29th regular Board of Ed meeting, and the December 4th special meeting. So moved. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. All right, and we have some correspondence. For Philly. That you want to have? Oh, sorry. Sorry. I didn't go there.
Yeah, so, okay. So, under correspondence, we do, have, Steve Rio here from Killingly. He is the superintendent from, Killingly Public Schools, and Elise, Gary, thank you, is the principal of Killingly High School. I'm sorry, I should have had that. I asked that they come here tonight. I know that there have been questions. We have talked about the Killingly High School tuition, and so I thought maybe we should just have them here, and so they agreed to come and speak to us. So if you want to come forward, or
And actually, while you're here, I think we should add to the public the best of congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you. And the congratulations also extends to our Brooklyn family. I would like to publicly thank the Mortlake Fire Department and the East Brooklyn Fire Department participated in the escort from the Java Plaza all the way up to the high school. It was a magical evening. It's really interesting when you see a community really come together like that. It was 11:30 at night, and there was an escort going up on Main Street that felt like a mile long. When I was at Kohl's, I could see all the lights kind of going up. There was a man in his robe outside with a pot and a spoon rattling it away as the whole escort team. My movie planning operate as well. So I'd like to thank you for having me here. I know there was a lot of questions. And actually, Mrs. Buell and I have started conversations about the tuition agreement prior to other new rates coming out. It's each of our first year. So we've been uncovering what's new, what needs to change, what's old, what needs to stay. And, I think what sparked some of the conversations for me is I received a phone call from another district and they say, so what's your high school tuition rate? We're already sending a bus up for the ACT program. We'd like to consider sending some other students. I say, we really don't know yet. We'll have to wait until November to tell you what the tuition rate is for this current school year. And it just seemed a little peculiar that we had to do that way. And it would have been very unfair for the board to establish a tuition rate for other towns that would be different from the Brooklyn rate when we had this agreement. So when I was discussing some different ideas with Mrs. Buell, it was, what if we do everything the same, but we establish the rate a year in advance? So instead of so essentially this year's rate would be the same as next year. So this year would have no increase. But as you can see from one of the tables I sent you, the 10-year history reflects ups and downs almost of the last 10 years. This increase that we saw this year isn't even the highest increase that Brooklyn had experienced over the last 10 years. I think it's the third highest. So there's always that, you might solve one problem and create another, right? So next year, if there's a spike in population, the rate would actually go down. But you've already locked into a rate now, so then you wouldn't experience it. So it's very, I think that's the best way to say it. You look at one problem now, or you can do something a little different. I think the upside to it, though, is at least the rate's established. We know for the next 3 years that it's just going to be a crapshoot when it comes to the state budget. Looking at 5% decreases over the next 3 years. And the overall state budget, I think, is going to impact all of us. So having some stability really helps. Even with our local budget, we anticipated 111 students coming to us from Brooklyn. We anticipated a tuition rate. The tuition rate was higher. The number of students was higher. So there was that additional tuition rate that the district didn't receive credit for, which could have impacted. So, for example, we had freshman football and freshman basketball. That was on a decision package for the high school. Just because we were trying to make cuts, those decision packages didn't go through. Had we had a firmer understanding of some of the tuition rates, those decisions are, I think, a little more purposeful. But to answer some of the questions, Mrs. Gary is here. We gave you some handouts about the career pathways at the high school, some of the celebrations that have been going on. And she really wanted to come, just an opportunity to say hello and for you to see the high school principal in person. If you have any questions for that, either now or you can even email us later on. I think that'd be good help. So, our tuition agreement, been in place since 1997. Was anybody here? So how did that go, that conversation? Was that a lengthy conversation? I would imagine I can see people trying to get together, and every time you try to make some of these arrangements, you try to get a handle on what it actually means. And I think if you speak to your business manager, you can drive yourself crazy trying to get a very specific calculations. So our budget book is established, I'm sure, like every others, with different sections. So health has its own department, the high school has its own department, informational technology. And technology is always that tricky situation, right? So document cameras might be in the high school budget, but the lease agreement for the one-to-one program at the high school is in the IT budget. So how do we kind of manage all of those final decisions? On the handout that looks like this is really the heart of how the tuition is calculated. And this really relates to Section 3 of the contract. So in Section 3 of the contract, it identifies what to include in the budget calculations and discusses what to exclude. So, for example, transportation is not included in the calculation. You're not paying for the students go back and forth from Killingly, so that's out. All the pupil services expenditures, with the exception of a couple minor things that are just in that department that apply to the high school, but aren't necessarily related to direct special ed services, because those are a separate agreement. So the high school budget has its own department, and when you look at that line item, It's $7,348,000, and so that high school amount would be calculated in the total cost. The other item that's in section 3 is operation and maintenance. So what we do for operation and maintenance is we exclude all of the utilities, so that is not included in here. This mostly pays for salaries, supplies to the buildings, and then that is rated proportionally. So there are 803 students this year at the high school, so that's approximately 1/3 of all the students in the district. So the cost for operation and maintenance is divided by 3, essentially, 0.32%. You know, the interesting piece here, this is one of those items that you could drive yourself crazy, because the majority of the time for our maintainers is spent at the high school, the athletic fields, all the grounds that are associated with it, maintaining that beautiful building that's up there. But we don't break it down, say 60% of the times at the high school. This is one of those items that's just 1/3. It's, or whatever the particular population rate is. So you can see they go to 5 decimal places, so it's 0.32, 2231. The only utility costs that are included in the high school budget. So whatever the heat, electric, and any kind of water maintenance supplies, so we have wells over there, and sewer fees are included in the budget. Now, I know Mrs. Buell explained to you that the tuition rate for last year was actually off a little. And the reason for that is when they looked at the overall high school budget and they went to go add utilities, it wasn't included. The plus sign in Excel was omitted. So if you can think of the tuition being $6,600,032 plus $452,000, if you omit the plus sign, because it was after the decimal point, that $400,000 wasn't included in the total cost for the high school. So that's where that slight adjustment comes. That adjustment was only noticed in diving deeper into this document. So we felt it would be unfair to even attempt to engage in that conversation about trying to fix that. So we just absorbed that difference. Any questions on that? Because I just want to make sure that was a little tricky. So the non-special ed section there, that's actually the high school social worker. So the high school social worker's position in the budget is actually in the pupil service budget. Since we don't include that section at all in the overall calculation, the social worker is included as a separate line item. We also have a district-wide resource officer. Even though that person is positioned at the high school, he does support the elementary schools and he does support the middle school. The majority of his time is at the high school supporting those needs. So you can see that his overall salary, benefits, insurance is $100,000, but what's applied to the Brooklyn tuition is only 1/3 of that, $32,000.
Can I ask, it looks like all of the numbers on the left, the BOE budget, are 3 times what the right is.
For the most part.
Except for the social worker, it's the same number.
Because that position is 100% works at the high school. So that actual person could have been budgeted in the high school budget, per se, if you think of your budget book. But the way our budget book is built, her position is actually in the pupil services budget. But because we exclude that entire amount, because that exclusion is more for special education teachers, OT, PT, all of those things are pulled out of the budget. But she services all students, regular ed and special ed students at the high school.
Paying a third of that, not the whole amount.
Because the third calculation it's a great question. The third calculation is proportional to high school students, the 803 high school students. That's where the third came from.
Versus the entire KMS, KCS, KIS population. Like there's 2,492 kids in the entire system.
So I can word it a little differently. The column on the left are the actual expenditures for the entire district. The column on the right are the actual costs associated with the high school only. So the title says Brooklyn, that's applicable. It could just say high school budget. Would be another way of wording that. To get the actual per pupil expenditure.
Okay, so I was thinking, and forgive me if I'm backtracking my brain here. So this is, the Brooklyn applicable is
What-
whatever we have for students.
No, that's all the high
All
school
the high
costs,
school.
all 803 students. That's how we're calculating the per pupil expenditure. So then you go to the bottom of the table,
Oh,
then it's,
so it's not really Brooklyn applicable, it's high school.
It's
right,
just per the contract. Those are the items that are applicable to us per the contract, which has a whole section later on.
mhm.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I'm glad you asked that, because that's a key point in the presentation that I omitted. So you can see for the health budget, for the whole district, it's 638,000. A third of that applies to the high school, which is 205. Library services for the whole district is 443. A third of that. Informational technology is another example where it's 1.4 million, even though the vast digital input the footprint of the district is at the high school. Number of servers, the one-to-one program. What applies as a district state from that 1.4 million is much more heavily applied to the high school. We still only do a third. If we tried to nitpick that to that level, it would drive us crazy. So the student population at the high school was higher, that 1/3 number would change. If it was lower, it would also change. Instructional improvement, that's your curriculum coordinators, professional development, items very similar to your own budget, 1/3. The in-kind, per the contract, those costs associated with supports from your local town, very similar to your own EDO a report. There's a line item in that report that specifically states in-kind services. That item is applied per the contract between each town. And then central office staff. The central office staff is superintendent, assistant superintendent, business office, does not include the pupil service director, assistant pupil service director, does not include his secretaries. That's just the central office staff, 1/3. So when you look at that tuition rate and then you divide it by up top the number of students, this year's per pupil expenditures, $13,055. So last year on October 1st, we had 840 students. For whatever reason this year, I think we had a few students that changed their mind last year. I know we've been trying to include the number of students from different towns. People made other choices. Ellis Tech, some of the choice schools. I know our enrollment in 8th grade was a little lower this year. I believe yours was a little lower this year. So all of those factors do come into play into these agreements. So that's how those costs were assigned. And then in section 11 of the contract talks about capital improvements to the overall building. Obviously the new high school. I called the town hall today. We tell them what the tuition is, what that rate is. You can see from the right-hand column and the 10-year history. There is some fluctuation in that number that's based essentially those changes on the student population, that the cost can change. So when we were in the old high school, when it was 50 years old and there was no cost associated with that building, it was 0.
So the 803 students does not include VOAG. Is that
It
correct?
does include VOAG.
It includes VOAG.
So the VOAG students, so the cost for VOAG is not included, right? So the $450,000 packet is not included, but the number of students that utilize the high school is included. So if we were to exclude the VOAG students, that would significantly raise the tuition rate. So the more students we can get to the ag program, because they utilize all the same services, administration, health, nurse, the one-to-one program, homeroom classes. They're in the ag program for 2 classes a day. They do a lot of work, participate in all those clubs as well.
So I don't know, maybe this is not I don't know, it's gonna come up as we start talking about budget, and it's come up as we've talked about, our budget shortfall is why should we continue to designate Killenly High School? It's gonna come up as why don't we just make a choice for one school, and where the costs associated with KHS are higher than our other choices. What would your answer to that question be? Not to put you on the spot.
No,
but-
it's a very fair question. My answer would be, if you had all of your students go to Killingly, your tuition rate would plummet. So for example, this year, if another 150 students attended Killingly High School, so that's about another 35 per grade, the tuition would have went down over $2,300. Because our high school staff could have absorbed that much of students. The other pluses of the high school really are, our teachers teach 6 sections. So they have 120 students. Their class sizes are a lot smaller. I think there's a really important personalized touch at Killingly High School. You can see from the programs and the choices that are there. Our school is large enough to offer a comprehensive program, but small enough to give it a personalized touch. We have 15 different towns that come to Killingly. We don't differentiate. Killingly, Canterbury, Brooklyn. Our students have melded over the years seamlessly. So if you were to use a single choice high school, I think you would see a significant savings by choosing Killingly. Our agreement is based on our costs. So the better our programming, more opportunities for students, yeah, the cost will be a little bit higher. If we were to strip down the opportunities and cut down the number of sports and cut down the number of sections and increase class sizes, yes, tuition would go down, but at what cost? I think at this point right now, as you've seen over the years, the school really pulls together. Any kind of travesty that hits, the sense of community is strong and tight, and I think we've had a long-standing partnership. You know, and I think also a lot of families attend Brooklyn because they like the choice of having different choices. But and Woodstock Academy is a great program. You know, Mr. Sanford and Mrs. Gary communicate all the time. They work well together. We try to share opportunities whenever we can. We have guest speakers. We invite each school to participate. So it's a choice, you know. It's a different flavor, I think, for some children. We've had children attend Woodstock Academy and then decide to come to Killingly to try something different. You know, I think it's very different for different kids. You know, a lot of kids travel with their friends, right? So we've had years, I think just as recently as 7 years ago, there was like 5 kids per grade that chose Killingly High School. The tuition numbers were higher then, so you probably didn't even notice. But I think over the last few years, a lot more families and a lot more kids have recognized that there's a lot of great stuff happening at that school, and there's a lot to offer them.
What's the
So-
graduation rate at Killenly?
Our graduation rate is currently 82%. You know, I think when you piece some of those numbers out, it looks very differently. You know, so for example, if you were to look at the 4-year graduation rate, right, because it doesn't necessarily reflect the dropout rate either. I think that's something to be clear on, that a lot of those students are still in school. However, when we look at the 4-year graduation rates, who's kind of finished in that 4 years? Our students that are not on free lunch, the 4-year graduation rate is 96%. Right? The students that are on free lunch is significantly lower. It's something that we work hard on supporting all of those students. But when you look at the overall number, that impacts that. So we've had a 7-year trend on the upward movement. On the upward movement, we had a little dip this year. We were, I think, as high as 84%. I think we dipped to 82. But we're doing a lot of good things. We have a new administrative team in their 2nd year. I've had a chance to talk to different families. We've seen a lot of consistency and a lot more sense of climate and culture in the building. A lot more buy-in with the kids, the staff, and the family. A lot of good things going on up there. The one-to-one program probably gets the most attention. One of the most powerful tools that we introduced to the district is called the Meraki software. So when those students walk into the buildings with their iPads, any of the fun apps that they installed on their computer just magically disappear. And the Meraki system controls it by their schedule. So as soon as the student walks into the network, teachers and administrators have complete control of those iPads. When the kids leave, there's more flexibility. If families call to complain that they want it locked down completely, with a phone call, that happens. That's correct.
Yes.
It's good. Who has a high school
Profile.
student? But as a high school student.
Well, I have one, yes.
So those types of kind of innovative ideas. Last year for that Meraki software, Killingly was a beta school, one of 10 beta schools in the country for Apple. They work closely with us. They recognize some of the exciting things that are going on. So we've been working hard to make sure that that tool isn't just in the bag and that we're seeing it in classrooms used on a regular basis. And we frequently do rounds and observations, and we're seeing it used more and more in a very purposeful manner. That's what makes a difference. Yes, sir.
Could you make some comments about comparisons between Killingly High School and Woodstock Academy in terms of academic performance of students, not just graduation?
Yeah, I wish I could. I haven't dived into the Academy's numbers in a long time, so I apologize for that.
Do you know what percentage of your students go on to college?
Great question. No, I don't. It's, you know that one?
I don't wanna shoot a number off the top of my
definitely
head.
guess.
I'd rather send it to Patty
You know,
tomorrow,
Yeah.
and she can share that with you. I have a number in my head, but I can't tell you that's really where the number's coming from.
So some of the numbers I can share with you are about 6 years ago, Killingly High School participated in a program called Project Open Doors. So when you think of AP course enrollment, for years, the biggest obstacle of getting into AP classes were the adults, right? You needed the adult recommendation, you had to get a certain grade in a certain class. Project Open Doors came in and really challenged teachers to look at who's in the program differently. So there was about 70 students taking AP courses at the high school. The first year Project Open Doors was in, that number doubled. And more importantly, the pass rate remained at 70% of the students attaining a 3 or better. We've had some change in staff. Some of those numbers have dipped. The number of students going into AP courses and the number of AP courses that we're trying to offer have been flat and consistent in spite of the declining enrollment that we're seeing within our region. So those are some of the positive academic pieces that we've had. You know, leadership goes a long way. That high school has had 5 or 6 different principals. So we've had some really positive initiatives that have gone by that get a full head of steam, and then they kind of fizzle out. And even I'm the 3rd superintendent in 16 months at the high school. But we are seeing a lot of great energy in terms of curriculum, science integration. We're pretty fortunate to have Mr. Paul Brenton as our new assistant superintendent. He's been working hard with the high school staff. We've been looking at some of those positive trends.
Do you have any kids working on college credit courses?
So part of
Do you
what
work
you
with any of the colleges?
Yes,
Yeah.
so we've been working closely with QB. They've changed their rules a little bit, so we're trying to manage all of that, all the reconstruction of how they manage their departments have changed. But the career pathways that you see in front of you are opportunities for kids to personalize in a particular approach and earn some QB credits there. We also have the early college criteria for the ECE credits, as well as obviously students can earn credits through the AP courses.
And for UConn.
Yeah.
Do you use Eastern too?
No, we have not set up a partnership with Eastern. There's some set criteria which not all colleges like to provide in terms of, we're working on the training for Eastern for our accounting department, but we haven't confirmed that yet.
So you're working on Eastern, you work with UConn and QB.
So at graduation, students receive an additional little medallion for their career pathways. We've had one last year, I think, at 5. A little bit of a show off there, but it's just an opportunity for that personalized approach. The elective courses at the high school are exceptional. The music and the band program continue to participate at state and national levels, and I've done a really great job. That program continues to grow. The feeder program at the middle school has also been exceptional, with 60% of our 5th grade students joining band. So if you can imagine being a music teacher with 120 5th graders that have never touched an instrument before, it takes a special person to take that path.
Sorry for all the
No,
questions.
that's why we're here.
What, now you charge for sports, right? per student or per?
Per
We have
family.
a family fee, $100 family fee for all the sports for 1 school year.
For a whole school
Yeah.
year? And is there something for like the other things like band and chorus and?
No.
No,
No fees.
no fees for those, so 100 family cap,
Yeah,
Families in hardship, we waive.
okay.
for iPads and for any payment, whether it's, not privileges, but class dues. We review all of the, the needs based on family hardships.
What's the charge for the iPad program?
$50.
$50 for the insurance. So this year, out of 800 students, I think we had 100 waivers. And we've learned that ideally it would be zero. But sometimes just that little investment goes a long way. For example, summer school, we use a program called Edgenuity for an online credit recovery program. We've had opportunities during the year as well, after school. We've also added to our budget this year, we have 3 tutors that's there to school to support all students. We've also committed funds for transportation for out-of-town students. We have 2 buses, one north, one south. So regardless of the town the kids live, they can participate in school tutoring supports to Monday and Thursday.
Monday through Thursday until 4:30, students can stay and get an academic support in the content areas by one of the certified teachers. Or also we offer organizational supports for students, and it's, sign up, let us know you're staying, and we bus to all 15, 14 towns.
And so where I was going with that was for summer school, when students come, let's say we have 25, 40 spots, we've lowered the buy-in to $25. It used to be $50. So I think it should be free. But as my guidance counselors tell me, you end up with a lot of kids that sign up and then don't show up. And they take the seat of somebody who wanted to come. So that small fee of $25 seems to be just enough nudge to kind of get people to come.
Anybody have anything else?
I have an additional question. I just want to get clear that since the tuition rate is calculated based on the items you've discussed and is based on the last year's charges, that means that next year, even if you lose your Alliance district funding, our tuition rate will not change.
That's a great question. It won't. That's what we're trying to avoid, any of those kind of changes. It was one of the public facts are out there about the Alliance District is one, I still today have not received a letter saying we're an Alliance District. So I read about it in the paper and I called the State Department and I said, hey, I hear we're an Alliance District. What's the criteria and how much is the grant going to be and what can we use the grant for? So in fairness to them, they're in turmoil as well. The recent cuts by the governor last Friday changed all of their numbers. So they had to redo all the work they had done. So we'll be getting some information there. Based on the previous application, I think it'll be very similar. The grant can't be used to supplement your budget. So for example, Killingly, at the time that we received the Alliance grant 6 years ago, had no summer school, no after school supports, no remedial math in any of our elementary schools, half-day kindergarten, no gifted and talented program, no math interventionist. So what we did is we used Alliance funding to start a full day K program. Then over the course of 5 years, we moved 0.5 position into the local budget, moved 1 position into the local budget. So currently where we are now, all of those programs are fully funded by the Board of Ed. So when we get the new Alliance program, we'll be looking to expand summer school opportunities, looking to expand the tutoring opportunities for students. Those are some of the things that we use the Alliance funding for, but it's meant to do something different. I'm told informally it's another 5-year grant to support the districts. For now, until they change their mind again.
Tomorrow.
One more question. So Ms. Conley asked about school of choice, and then you said if Brooklyn were to choose Killingly, do you have the capacity or the capacity for all of Brooklyn?
We built the school with the intention of a long-term partnership with Killingly. That school can house 1,100 students.
So you can only take 300 more though.
Right.
So that wouldn't cover all of them.
I think it would. How many students do you have over the?
No,
That's-
350, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
less than three.
So how many eighth grade students do you have? About 80?
80.
So times 4 is 320, minus 100 that are already there. More than the space.
We got a couple big classes.
We've got, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, seventh grade, the fourth grade is really big, you know, this current seventh grade now is really big. I mean, we do have some big grades coming up. We don't have the
They're all-
same
but they're all
problems.
set by small.
Our bubble's in K1 right now. We're about 180 per grade.
Yeah, so we have a total, oh no, because that includes 119.
One of the things I just would mention that Mr. Rio and I have discussed is how are there opportunities for us to collaborate? And I think, you know, as we move forward and as we explore some of the things that, you know, Killingly has to offer, and are there opportunities for us to connect for, you know, opportunities such as, let's say, STEAM or other activities that we might be able to collaborate. I think that's a conversation that's in the works. You know, we don't have plans yet, but I would like to be able to expand our partnership and have opportunities to see if there are things that we can do with Killingly as an option to expand things that we're not able to offer in our smaller community.
Yeah, a good example would be, and I'm coming off the top of my head right now, just as bringing up, our eighth graders started participating in TSA, right? So the TSA Association, Killingly High School has hosted the TSA program for the last 3 years.
What is that?
Technical Student Association.
Yes, technology.
So it's a team of students that do a lot of STEM activities and participate in different state programs. The local chapter for the state, Killingly, has had an executive board member for the last 3 years. Jim Hudson's our advisor. He was the state president for 4 years. Our eighth grade students started their own chapter. So on Wednesdays, they come up and participate. I could see a partnership where a few eighth grade students wanting to participate in TSA, joining that group. Bus is already coming up here. They might have to leave school a little early. But those types of activities, I think, are within reason, and some of the partnerships that we do. Our Career Pathways program 2 years ago was identified as a model program for the entire state. The state of Connecticut is sending school districts to Killingly to mirror the collaboration between teachers and the support structure for the Career Pathway program. I don't remember her name that wrote the letter. It was through Perkins Grant Audit. Through that process, they did an evaluation. They did some good work.
I guess I go back to the graduation rate. To me, is a little. I know 20% of your kids aren't graduating, or
In 4 years.
in 4 years. I
Correct.
mean, even that, you know, seems a little. Is there any? I'm sure that you have. Is there any plans to like use grant money to try to increase that rate? I mean,
So
Woodstock's got 100% graduation rate. It's sort of a big difference, and that we
It's a big
hear that
difference.
quite
I think
a lot.
I'll speak on a couple of levels. I'm a parent of a student who graduated last year, who, just to toot my own horn, has become a Marine, and he just graduated, and he's home after
Congratulations.
completing boot camp. So so I've had an experience with the high school as a parent for 4 years, and I would say echo what Steve said, which is the leadership issues at the high school over the last 9 years. They refer to me as principal number 9. And the staff, just so that you're aware of, they've been up to that building, has been open 10 years, the new building. And so I am principal number 9, and hopefully I've returned for the second year. And so we're off to a good start. I have 2 very strong assistant principals, and we have been spending an awful lot of time on the graduation rate and the level of failures. I think our demographics with Woodstock is very different. And I think, interestingly enough, having been born and raised in Killingly, but lived in Brooklyn for most of my adult life, going back to Killingly, the demographics certainly have changed. The population of families that have significant needs. I was at the elementary school in Killingly before I went to the high school 3 years ago, and so I have an experience with those levels of what we need to do to support students and to support families, and also kind of call people to attention that this is your last 4 years before you go out into the real world, as we call it. So we're including interventions, our credit recovery, we have an increase in identifying students with needs, whether it be Brooklyn, Killingly, any of the towns, they come to us with some significant needs, and really looking at our teaching practices and our instructional practices along with the curriculum. We're under a strong curriculum revision. We are under a NEASC evaluation. We have a 2020 visit. We'll start there's a new process for the association in terms of how they evaluate high schools, which is more of a self-reflective process in terms of understanding the needs of how do we do an honest evaluation of ourselves as a high school under all of the areas, student learning resources, curriculum, and how do we make those changes in a school improvement plan. We have a school improvement plan for the first time in a long time, and we are moving towards that in terms of making improvements. So I have great expectations for the work that we've been doing. This is the first year, the second year that there has not been an assistant principal moving into an interim principalship and then having somebody who's never been an assistant principal be. So this is and the three of us, my two assistants and I both of them are high school teachers and not new administrators and not new to the world of life. And so we're doing, we're doing a lot of work to have people shift their practices and really see, and we're seeing the changes now. I mean, teachers stepping up into leadership roles and students, the behavior. We have 97% of our students do not have an office referral. We have a very small percentage of students that have many, but that's a very small percentage. So we continue to work on the climate and culture and the expectations of why they come to school.
I'll give you a couple other little anecdotal things. So for discipline, we have a discipline system, which teachers can type in what kids are doing wrong. So the high school administrative staff, particularly the APs, challenged the teachers and they created a new code for a positive call home. So in our software, you can track what we call major offenses, which are your traditional office referrals, and minor offenses. So if a teacher has already assigned, a couple classroom detentions, already called home, when that student gets the office referral, counts as a major, the assistant principal knows already, hey, listen, your teacher's been working with you for the last year. Yeah, knock it off. What's going on here? But to take a positive spin, they now are required to make a positive call home and note it in the system. Their goal was to get to 1,000 before the end of the year. I think they're at 900 now.
Building relationships.
Elise prints out quarterly D and F reports. And at the end of last year, she had an F report. Every single teacher was required to create a plan for every single student that had an F. All the advisory teachers had to be responsible for the 12 kids in their class and how they're going to report to that. We utilize the online software. The relationship piece is essential, and we totally understand that. So we're putting the structures in place and creating conditions for success. Some of those graduation rates take time to change because the reality is kids who are seniors this year have had some negative experiences 2 or 3 years ago. So Elisa's efforts are going to take a couple of years to show some of that difference. I also have 2 graduating students. I have 4th in the class and 4th from the bottom. So I kind of get how those struggles happen with families, and but we're doing the right things.
Can you just explain advisory program, because we talk about that, but not every parent or board member understands what that means. Can you explain your advisory program?
Yeah. So advisory is essentially what we recall in our high school experience as a homeroom. And we don't have it first period and we don't have it last period, so that you actually have to show up, which is at 9 o'clock every day. And we have 28 minutes of an advisory period. Students are divided by grade. And so there are 25 advisories for each of the grades, and those students go and they spend, in most cases, 4 years with that advisory teacher unless something changes. We tend to, after 2 years of ag, send our ag students into the ag advisory so that they can be in the ag program, because their level of work is very different. So the time that they can spend in that ag wing to complete their SAE project and complete all of their other capstone projects, we shift them into, so we take a large group of students, but for 9th and 10th grade, and in most cases, aside from the ag students, all 4 years you spend with the same teacher every day from 9 to 9:28. We have an advisory curriculum we send out to the teachers every week and tell them what they need to do. In some cases, it's just informational, so here's what's going on this week, we need to get this done. And in some cases, we're teaching lessons on character development, on stress relief, on managing and organizing ourselves. We send it out as a school and we have that, we vary it by grade. We do class meetings during that period. And we also do backpacking every 2 weeks, and we call that backpacking because it's essentially what you would do with your own kid at home. You call up Power School and you sit down with them and you say, what's going on? How's this? Good for you. And we have created a Google spreadsheet. It's a Google form that our teachers have to sign in for every student. And they send us, they answer 3 questions. Am I failing? Do I have a D or an F in any classes? What am I going to do about this? And the advisory teacher and the student make an agreement. It goes into a Google form and it comes to us as administrators. We pull up those Google forms and we follow up to make sure that that work has gotten done or that the agreement has been made. The advisory teacher can also send the student to the teacher who they owe work to during that period to go gather that work and then come back. So we use it as kind of an intervention, a checking up, and then we actually produce that data for our faculty meetings every month about what our Ds and Fs look like at the last advisory backpacking, and we are just having those conversations about how can we fix that and how do we address that. And we also now are going back to, on top of advisory, we're meeting with all the 9th grade advisories in a different capacity because the 9th grade team, we see that our 8th grade students tend to have, some of them tend to have a bit of a transition coming from a small middle school and even our own middle school. The middle school model is very different than a high school model, and so we are continuing to develop ways to help those students transition. We hear a lot of, I didn't have to travel, or I had 3 days to get my work done, or my teacher would come find me in middle school and they don't come find me in high school. So we're really having those conversations using student voices, like how can we help you? We had a student that struggled last year, I just talked to my AP about this yesterday, who struggled last year significantly, and he's doing great this year. And she said to him, what's going on? And he said, I feel like now I have a handle on it and I know I can't fall behind, and so I'm not letting myself fall behind. He had the middle school mentality in his first half of high school. And it was like, oh, I'll catch up by June, but that doesn't work in high school. And so we're working on how do we support the transition specifically for 9th, but also really the advisory program allows you to build that relationship for 4 years, and that teacher becomes sort of a parent, if you will, of they can bug you and the parent can communicate directly with the advisory teacher, and you don't have to find 8 emails, because that is also very challenging.
I'd be happy to come and talk your ear off again anytime. Patty has my cell phone number, and no, please, we actually enjoy the opportunity. It's something I wanted to do sooner in the year. Life just got in the way and didn't reach out soon enough, so thank you again for allowing us all this time. I know we have a full agenda tonight, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next on. See, and now this is my chance to make money.
There's no public comment about that at all.
Can't make a comment.
There's
There's a
another
public
one.
comment at the end, yep. Okay. So next, excuse me. I wanted to read a letter that we received to Mrs. Poole. It's from our IT teacher, Mark Villan. It is with Deeper.
Take care.
Sorry. It is with deep regret that I confirm today that I will be retiring after completing the 90th day of the 2017-18 school year. Please know that I have enjoyed the last 35 and a half years at Brooklyn Middle School and will miss the many teachers, students, staff, and administrators that I've worked with over my long tenure here. So it is with deep regret and that we accept his retirement notice, and we wish him the absolute best in his future endeavors, whatever those may be. And we can officially accept. I always say that, like, no, we're not accepting anything. All right. So next we've got administrative reports, a current budget.
So I did include the usual monthly report. You will see that we are continuing to kind of track our expenditures. This month, you will see a negative balance at the bottom. Some of that is related to the multiple conversations that we've had around budgets for the year. As you know, we've made some reductions that are not reflected in this yet. They will be reflected in our January. Some of the reductions in staff will be there. We also have some grant funding that will still be pulled down. So there are, some pieces. So our excess cost grants as well has not been applied. So we are watching this every day, every week. So I know that negative number doesn't look good, but I think you'll see a difference in January because we'll unencumber some of the funds for staff that we thought were going to be with us for a full year and now have retired or been. Some of those numbers will be adjusted in January, so you will see that. I just included with this the summary of reductions that were made on December 4th. That document is public. It's everywhere. So it's on the webpage and it's been shared at the town meeting or the Board of Finance meeting. Will be shared. Some of that information, summary information, will be shared with the at the town meeting as well. So I just wanted to include that in there so you would have it. Just under administrative comments, I did want to note that tomorrow night there is the town meeting. It is scheduled 7 p.m. That meeting is going to be located at the Brooklyn Middle School auditorium. So 7 p.m. It's an important meeting to attend for Brooklyn residents so that they know what we're doing moving forward, what the town is asking of its taxpayers. So that's an important meeting to participate in.
All right, and as far as committees, I don't think any of the committees have met except for.
Oh, can I just say one thing about the meeting tomorrow? Is it possible to send out a school messenger reminder for the town meeting tomorrow?
Yes.
Thank you. PTO has been posting it too to try to just remind people to go and,
I'll send it out in the morning, like maybe 7 o'clock.
yeah, just so that it goes through Messenger and remind parents 7 o'clock. I mean, I've been telling everybody that I could possibly, I don't know, everybody else has too, but
Good.
I think school messenger would be great, Rita.
And I don't believe any of our actual Board of Ed committees met, except for our administration, but we'll talk about that afterwards. Mrs. Buell, if you or Mr. Otto want to talk about the special Board of Finance meeting, since I was not able to attend that one. I think it was basically just to approve what we had talked about.
The
in our budget
meeting was,
workshop.
from the Board of Finance's perspective, the meeting was an opportunity for Mrs. Buell to convey to the members of the Board of Finance who were not involved with the week-to-week discussions what the impact of the proposed budget reductions in the Board of Education budget were, and was an opportunity to also talk about the mechanism that we will use to address the larger deficit. And we reached agreement on that, and that's what will be presented at the town meeting tomorrow. There are, as in most questions, there are always some alternative views, but I think the majority of people who've expressed opinions are in agreement that the path that we're proposing to follow is right.
I would just, if you don't mind, add that I am grateful to the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, that they are kind of looking at the education budget as this is a community endeavor, and that, it wasn't just, well, that's the school, we're all in this together, and it really was a community approach, and that's what we're going to hear tomorrow when we go to the town meeting, is that, we're looking at the Board of Ed made some reductions to help offset the deficit. The town is looking at using some additional reductions that they have, as well as reallocating funds to cover the offset that we need in order to finish the year in black. So I'm just grateful to the community. I'm grateful to be here in this community where we're supportive of education.
Any other representative reports to other committees at all?
Woodstock, no Woodstock meeting in December. We meet again in January.
Under old business, we have transportation.
Sure.
Just a quick update on transportation. As you know, as the action of the board to create a common schedule for the middle school and the elementary school does require us to make some transportation adjustments again. I will, just let you know that the M&J has been very proactive. They've met with me a few times. We have 2 local drivers that are also acting in some kind of management capacity as well, and have been spending a significant amount of time. I do feel for them. They had adjusted the routes, and before we could implement those, I asked that they be adjusted again in order to accommodate the common schedule, which is going to reduce our expenditures for transportation. So I don't have the routes yet. When we called yesterday, I had kind of hoped that we would have them, but this is huge. This is a huge piece.
I have noticed them driving around at,
Okay.
when they wouldn't be
Okay.
picking up, but they would stop at my house, and then, so I think they have them actually practicing timing for some of them, because
That's good to hear.
yeah, I know our route would be super full with both schools in it, so if you see them driving around town at 10 o'clock, it's because they appear to be running the routes to time them, so that's a good sign, I thought.
I do anticipating it getting new routes. My hope would be that by tomorrow afternoon, I would be able to post those routes to our website. So that's the plan. The bus company's on board with me. We hope to post them. I do not believe that they will have the actual individual minute by minute stops. They'll have when they're leaving the bus garage, and so I think by default we'll get, you can have an estimated time as to when they're going to get to your house, or at the end of the day you'll know what time they're leaving the school. I guess I would just push my luck and ask for continued patience. I do think that this is an important piece, and I realize that I'm asking for, kind of more patience, and we will get to that point where we have more specific times on the bus list. But I do want to get those posted for a January 2nd start. I know that the schools are ready to make that move. The staff have all shifted their schedules. It's not ideal to shift on January 2nd, but it certainly is an effort to reduce our expenditures. So.
Another thing I have as far as the transportation is for parents or for people that still drop off their children at the different schools, because the middle school has the drop off at the gym side, and then the elementary school is over on the other side. Have we talked about the actual plan, and I know that there's been lots of questions of communicating that plan. I don't know if all of the details have been officially worked out, but how that drop off is going to work if we have all.
Yes, thank you. So we have, the administrators and I have talked about this multiple times. Again, probably not ideal yet, but we believe that we'll continue with the same drop-off pattern. So the middle school, if you have a middle school child, pull in, drop off your child, continue around the building. You'll join the elementary line if you have a student that you need to drop off for elementary. If you do not have a student that you need to drop off for elementary, currently those parents that are dropping for elementary sort of pull off to the breakdown lane, although there isn't one. So you're gonna, the parents, if you're middle school only drop off, you would just pass those cars slowly, go past those cars, and then stop at the stop sign and then continue on. So I do think there'll be sort of a little ebb and flow that we'll have to get into. I think there are a couple points where I'm concerned about is the corner as you come down past the Brooklyn Middle School and you turn the corner to come to the back. That's a tight corner there. Ideally, it would be nice to widen that a little bit, but I almost see 2 lanes of traffic coming in, drop off at the middle school. If you're an elementary parent, you keep going. You might join lines. If not, you would continue with 2 lines on the way out. If you are an elementary parent, you're gonna wait. Those middle school parents are going to stop at the stop sign. They're gonna go out. It's not ideal because they're gonna have to cross over. But I do think that if we exercise our patience with one another, I know that's difficult, especially if you're running late and it's getting to be work time and, you know, for whatever reason there's extra cars that day. I would just ask, continue to be patient. We will monitor it. If there are issues that parents are aware of or you're aware of, that you let us know. We're flexible, we're open to other ideas, but for now, we're gonna keep the pattern the same, so that way there's less confusion. When I send out the school messenger about the bus routes being posted, I will also send an updated map of the drop-off. So that's the plan.
One other question in regards to the, common time that I've been asked, and I've just said that, it's all being worked out, but middle school parents have been asking about after-school activities where like.
Before you go into that, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask something about the traffic pattern
Yeah,
first.
go ahead.
Just-
No, go ahead.
So oftentimes when you drop off from middle school and you kind of come around the back,
Yeah.
there's drop off happening where cars pull over to the left and it's right by the Rose Wing
Oh, that's before school.
before school program. Okay. So is that, because that could clog things up. There's many times 2 or 3 cars that are pulled over and that'll
So
throw
because
traffic.
that's not gonna be a before school time anymore.
Okay.
Right.
It is for you because you're dropping off middle school.
Okay.
Right.
That before school drop off is gonna happen before you ever get to.
Okay.
Right.
That's
So
what I was
before-
wondering. Yes.
That will
Okay.
hopefully clean up that.
Okay.
So,
After-school activities. Oh, some parents have asked me, like, ski club is the one that's coming to my head, that the late release
Right.
is really gonna interfere with that. Are we gonna allow for them to release
Early,
early
yes.
without,
They're
like,
gonna have to.
I did speak to Mr. Lewis, who called and said,
it'll really
what is
screw
this
things
gonna
up?
do?
Yeah.
And I think that, again, not ideal, but a decision we had to make.
Yep.
I think that one of those things that happens as you get to middle school and then to high school is, then how do you balance school and sports and, those things. Today we had Woodstock Academy here who performed the jazz band and the Hill Singers. And I think, how do those kids do it? They're out of their school, but, part of that balance is just a little bit in middle school, they're gonna start to learn that balance of, I gotta get my homework, I gotta get, my information. And, I've had different parents email me and I've tried to respond, and I appreciate that people are raising the questions like these questions. And I think that, together we'll address those questions. And again, there's not a perfect answer, but we're trying to do what is right for Brooklyn school community as a whole. And I think, teachers will understand if students have to be dismissed early and we'll get used to that as well. I think, teachers they haven't had to get used to that now, but they're gonna have to go to.
Anything else for transportation?
No, no, thank you.
Okay. All right, enrollment reports.
So our enrollment report is the usual report. Enrollment is pretty steady. Not, the bottom line really doesn't change much. We have some ins and outs at different times, but it's pretty consistent.
All right, and are we making a motion to approve this contract?
The high school contract, I don't know if it needs a motion. I did include a copy of the contract in there.
That one, because that one's already.
Well,
done.
yeah, it says
So-
that it needed to be renewed like 2000 and.
So you have a copy of the Killingly, the original
2007.
Killingly contract. It just and so we are gonna get an updated, contract from Killing that includes the calculation as Mr. Rio had just spoken about. We don't have that yet. And then also attached, you have a copy of the Woodstock Academy contract, which is a 10-year agreement, which is what we had talked about early on. They had agreed to this in their November Board of Ed meeting. So that just requires signatures. I think it's a similar kind of idea. The mindset is similar in that if we can calculate what the tuition rate is going to be for next year, then at least we have a better handle on our budget. So I think Killingly's contract is going to be similar. Woodstock Academy is the same way. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Just historically, I think when this fell apart, because we always had a rolling contract, but there was a group of people that wanted us to guarantee a minimum number of students. And that's when the contract stopped being signed.
It does talk about a minimum number in here. If somebody leaves district or they change their mind, we still have to pay for the minimum number that we guarantee.
Oh, the prior year.
No, it says for grade 9.
Yes, because we project how many ninth graders.
We give them a
I believe
guaranteed
only once
enrollment.
we ever got stuff paying for students.
Weren't there? Yeah, that's what it says. When we give them our
No,
figures
but
in
they
February.
wanted a minimum number of
Oh,
students that we
forever.
would send.
I got you. I got you. I thought you were talking.
So once we get the contract, kind of new language from Killingly, we'll review that.
And what's that with us? I've been just a crash for us.
Yes.
Okay. Do I have to make a motion to put aside policies? I think so. Okay. As we send out a notification, since we've had a couple illnesses and also a very short time between our November meeting and December meeting, I would entertain a motion to put aside our second read of the policy so that we actually have a little bit more time to review them and especially in light of the fact that Joan's not here as well, and she is policy.
I'll make that motion.
I have to second. All right, so we'll put those aside until next one, so it gives everybody a little bit more time. All right. So just to review the dates that we've got on our calendar, we are going to be adding our spring budget workshop meetings. And what we're trying to do is combine a couple of those with some other things that we got going on. So we're looking to do is add a budget workshop from 6 to 7 before our January Board of Ed meeting. Add a budget workshop from 5 to 6 before our February Lighthouse District training. Add a budget workshop from 5:30 to 6:30 on February 21st. That's a weird day because that is before the Board of Finance meeting.
February 21st.
The 21st is the Board of Finance meeting, so that's why. But just because now we're starting to get towards the kind of the end of the budget season of getting those final numbers prepared for whenever the Board of Ed and Board of Finance agrees on when we're going to present. And then adding another workshop from 6 to 7 before our February Board of Ed meeting.
Makes sense.
So just trying to, since those are nice that we're already out trying to combine
And as it stands, this anticipates that all of these budget workshops will be focused on developing the budget for the next year.
Correct.
Correct.
There is a chance.
No. No, 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 it's
We'll cross
There's
that bridge
more
if
than
we
one
get to it.
chance.
there's a boat ton of chances, so yes, no, this is our goal for next year, and obviously if 75,000 more things change, then we will adjust accordingly. But the goal of these workshops is to start formulating next school year's budget.
We have a lighthouse district training on the 21st as well of February.
No, I think just the,
Did I put that in the wrong day?
I think we talked about that possibility.
Okay, maybe. Oh, it came from an invitation one
I think we talked about the possibility, and then I told.
because of finance.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can just take that out and change it to budget.
It is in there.
Okay, I had it down, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. you said that. I think we had talked about it, I'm like, yeah, that's.
Okay,
yeah.
so delete February 21st and
Delete,
change it
yes.
to the 5:30 to 6:30.
5 years, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I
All right,
don't put it on the calendar, I don't
so we've got those and we'll make that official. Also enclosed, we have a copy of in your folder. The Brooklyn Administrators Association contract. We were able to come to an agreement on all of that, and that is presented to the board for your review from the negotiations committee. So did you want to talk about?
Just the process is that if the board, obviously the negotiation committee, I assume makes a recommendation that this be approved, and as long as it's approved, then we would sign off on it, and then we would submit it to the town. Administrative contracts get submitted to the town, and they're available to the town for 30-day review period, at which during that time, if there's some further discussion needed by the town, that's their 30-day period. If no action is taken, then that contract is approved and moved forward. If during that 30 days, there was some discussion from the town where they chose not to approve that for financial reasons or any other reason, they could send that back. It would end up going through an arbitration process. So we think that the contract that was negotiated was reasonable and fair.
I think it was very reasonable considering the climate that we are in. You know, I think the negotiations went well. You know, it was very amicable, so. So I would,
Recommendation that we approve the
right, so can you make the recommendation? For a second?
Second.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
So we have 30 days just to read this over before it goes into effect.
30 days, so we approve it tonight. Okay. We have to post it, new contracts with the town. So it's listed with the town. At that point in time, it sits for 30 days.
Okay, so we can't ask any questions about it.
Yes, you can, before you vote on it right now.
I
Before you
know, I
vote,
tried to read
before
it
you
before
vote
we
to
started.
approve it, you should, yeah.
Yes.
ask
I know.
questions.
I only got through like 3 pages before.
Well,
Or anything
no, everything,
No.
everything.
that's different from like the individual contracts?
Definitely it's different. This is the very first time that we've had an administrative
Right. For the whole
contract.
Yep.
That was negotiated through the union, so.
And a lot of what we were doing in our negotiations was really, you know, looking at where we're going as a district with our contract, streamlining the language.
And unifying, because we had
yeah.
different contracts. with
Yep,
all
I
of us.
remember, I knew all that.
You know, so that was really, you know, the goal of this, and I think we did a good job.
But we did, you know, we went back and forth several times, we did mediation. Everybody satisfied with this.
Okay. And we weren't here till 3 o'clock in the morning, so.
So there's no major changes, like nothing out of left field that, out of the individual contracts into the group contracts.
And it'll make it easier going forward when we do hire.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it really was just because all of the administrators had separate contracts. So with different variances of languages, depending on what their position was, depending on, you know, when they were hired or how long they necessarily been here. So it was
Salary
really just,
structures.
it was really just trying to get all of that
vacations and
language
everything. Yeah, so now it's kind of
consistent. And that was the biggest thing, and it was positive on both sides. That consistency.
they agree to get rid of the PPO.
High deductible, okay, so that's a big one.
Which is the way that the 13 agreement.
So everything is on that.
Yeah, everything was going that way, so it was just again that consistency.
Everybody's-
Okay.
no, There's a salary structure.
Okay, see that too. Okay, that's all. I just think there wasn't time to read it all. so I
No,
don't
there
know
is
if
a
there was
time for you to
anything-
read it, but on the recommendation, and the three of us, Joan and Amy, met with Ian, so we helped.
And Jeff was also involved in
Oh, I
negotiations.
just wanted to know if there was anything.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No? All in favor of approving the Brooklyn Administrators Association contract?
Aye.
Any other notes of business that I missed or anybody wants to add?
I hope everybody has a very Merry Christmas and enjoys break with their kids. I know family time is hard to come by, so I just want to say that as a side note.
So how much alcohol was it? Or you have twins.
Hey, I've got those too,
Yeah,
so.
Yours are older now. His are a little bit more than that. Public comment.
Two things. Where can I get a list of the BOE meetings through the dates through the end of the year? Because I only had up to 2017, and they're not always the third Wednesday of the month, as in February is the fourth. So where are they posted somewhere that I can find them?
So we, last month in our meeting, we did decide on all of the dates, but if you go to the town website, over on the right-hand side, there's a calendar.
And it has all the way through.
Each month you can do that. The only time that I foresee that it wouldn't be the fourth Wednesday of the month are probably November and December, if it was Thanksgiving and Christmas week that affected.
Yeah, well, I think in February is the fourth one. Or is it usually the fourth? Okay, I'm thinking it was the third.
Yep.
So
It's the fourth.
you guys set the
Board of
dates
Finance.
all the way through till?
Yes, we have to, by the first of the year, we have to set the 2018 dates for the
Okay.
entire year, so that we
Okay,
have
so
regular
we're set all the
meetings.
way through to
And
December
any,
next
any
year.
deviation from that would be
Yeah,
considered a special
okay,
meeting.
So if I looked at the minutes last month too, it would be in there?
So,
Yeah, and have you signed up for the town?
Yeah, I get that.
Oh, you get that too, because that'll remind you too when they're coming.
So the only one that's changed from a fourth Wednesday of the month is gonna be December of next year, which is going to be the 18th,
Which is like.
which is like this one.
Okay.
Because next year, the same thing, Thanksgiving falls ahead, so our fourth Thursday in November next year is fine as well. And it's because there's no school during the fourth Thursday. Why do we keep saying fourth Wednesday in
Wednesday,
December? So that's the reason why we move it, and we can't go to the third Wednesday because that's Board of Finance. So.
It's not in the minutes, but there was an attachment. We had a calendar.
Calendar.
Okay, I'll just put it in. My other comment was just listening to the Killingly representatives. And from what I've heard, listening to meetings, that Killingly High School's tuition is significantly higher than anywhere else. Is that correct? Because his statement was that if you send more students, the rate will go down, but if we send more students to Norwich, NFA, if we send more students to Woodstock, the rate would go down there too. So he didn't really explain why his rate is so much higher. And then if you bring up the graduation rate, I'm just saying that he didn't really have a strong, reason there that if you send me more students, the rate would go down, because it would go down anywhere.
Well, they take the total number of students times their budget and they just divide it. It's a mathematical computation.
It's tricky, I think, too, just as a general rule, to say that it would go down, because if you're sending 200 more kids, they're obviously gonna need more staff, so cost, it's one of those like.
I mean, I think his explanation was.
We should not be going back and forth. That we can talk about the rates. We can get a rate, for all of our high schools that we send our kids to. I'm not gonna say that Mr. Rio is, can talk to other schools because he's not responsible for financials for other schools, so I would let each of those individual schools talk individually of how they compile their rates and what their charges are. I think it's every parent's or guardian's prerogative to send their kid where they want to send them for. At this point in time, we're not, changing the way that we're doing high school. Not saying that sometime in the future that we don't consider that, because everything's always on the table, but as of right now, it's your choice as a parent where you send your kid. So, and everybody's got different reasons. We charge different rates as well. So, if we were to have kids here for, in our school, so.
Well, I think to be fair to Mr. Rio, he offered the explanation for how his tuitions are calculated. And on that basis, if we were to send more students, the tuition would go down. I'm virtually certain that if we sent more kids to NFA, the tuition would not change based on everything they've ever done before. And in Woodstock Academy, there's no reason to believe that those tuition rates would go down if we sent more kids, unless we tried to negotiate something, which we probably would be able to do.
Thank you for clarifying. So, any other public comment?
No. Do we know what that significant difference is between Killingly and Woodstock, for example, nowadays? We're talking, what's the magnitude? Because it may come up tomorrow.
You have the actual rates of.
I have the rates. Woodstock Academy tuition this year is $13,676 per student. Killingly High School tuition this year is $13,056 per student. If we were to compare also NFA, so Killingly and Woodstock are our designated high schools, and so of those two, Killingly is lower than Woodstock Academy. NFA is lower; they're not a designated high school, but they're $12,573 this year. We pay tuition to other schools, such as Plainfield High School, which is $13,036. Putnam High School, $11,477. And the other high school that we send to that has a regular tuition rate is Griswold, which is $11,867. So, Killingly High School tuition rate is not the highest that we pay. It just this year looked higher because last year was a lower rate.
Well, there's the capital cost too.
But that's not the tuition rate.
Right.
That's what
Well, it's, I feel.
And we pay capital.
Oh, yeah. I just think that that's, it's not on the education side, it's on the town side, but it is a fee that's charged per student. And if this is right, that it's $2,089, right? This is the most current one that was in the packet here today.
Thank you for clarifying, because they really are actually on the same page. I thought it was significantly different, but it's just because you went on last year's budget, and that's why it's,
right.
Okay, so
What's
that
that?
clarified it, because they are pretty similar to all the other schools.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Any other public comment? Anything else on the board?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, sorry, I was trying to get this. 1841, Kelly makes the motion to adjourn, May 2nd. All in favor? Aye.
Those are the others.
Overall numbers. It goes down. So if it's more and we have more kids, we get whacked. In the last 2 years, their overall population is fine. Wow.
That's the only thing that can cover a whole
just from previous conversations that their tuition
So you're still
It sound like that.
way higher
I thought so.
than the others, but they're actually